Welcome to Witch Bitch, where we talk the real tea. So, today we've got a part 2 on our last Ancient Mysteries episode about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, I had a lot of fun researching this. I've found out a lot of interesting things that link ancient, like the roots of Christianity with psychedelics. And I think it just really shows in physical reality how, we awakened people love to talk about how things are like manipulated slightly off center, and like how just a little bit of redirection can change a whole story, and how like the powers that be, I don't even know what to call them, the elites, I guess, like to change things around for their own plan. And we really go into it. So yeah, I'm excited about today's episode.
Awesome.
Do you have any questions before we begin?
No, but I'm just noticing some comments coming up, and somebody says the powers that were. So I like that.
Yes, the powers that were.
Not the powers that be anymore.
Yeah. So true. Okay, so I think we'll pick up where we left off yesterday. And don't worry if you haven't watched, pick up where we left off last episode, is what I meant to say. And don't worry if you haven't watched the previous one, because I will like try to make it make sense as best as I can without repeating myself. So linking the so in last episode I talked about how there was an international team. Well, it kind of liked to display itself as international, but really it was like all these religious scientists around the world. So they were all very strong believers in Christianity, or in religion, really. And they worked at the Rockefeller Museum.
Yeah,
and
right.
The Rockefeller Museum was the museum that held about half of the first ever scrolls to be discovered, because there was about 7 scrolls in total. I also feel like explaining what the scrolls are a little bit to the people that are new. So if you don't know, the Dead Sea Scrolls are a bunch of biblical texts. At least that's what people like to call them, because there's some texts that are completely biblical and like scripture from the Old Testament, and they're the oldest account of the Old Testament that we have to this day. But along with those scriptures, we also have all these other scrolls that aren't really that like religious. They're kind of a bit of a separate sort of genre of the Dead Sea Scrolls. But as we'll get into, this other group of scrolls aren't really talked about that much, and are kind of just like brushed over, sort of brushed over with the dust of the biblical scrolls to cover it up, sort of. So anyway, that's a bit of an overview. So to pick up where we left off, there's an international team of researchers and like, I don't even know what to label them, but researchers who are like trying to translate the text on the scrolls. And at this point, there's only one man who is not religious, and he is on the team because of his status, whereas all the other people who have joined the team of researchers, they've joined, at least I believe, because they are religious, and not really so much because of their background in the scrolls. Like it's like, it kind of just feels like, oh, there's this religious person and they have this sort of kind of qualification, and just like using that morsel of like tiny nugget of qualification to excuse them to be on the team. Like none of them made a name for themselves until they were on the team researching the scrolls. But this man, John M Allegro was his name. He was the only one that had built a reputation for himself, quite a prestigious one, I may add, before joining the team. and he was originally like very religious, and I think that's why he even got on in the first place. But after his education, where he got into etymology and I'm pretty sure like a whole bunch of other things, and he educated himself in a lot, but he got into etymology, and from his education he realized that he actually can't take anything from the Bible or from his beliefs seriously, so he stopped being religious and he no longer identified as, you know, whatever religion he was before, because I don't remember if it was Christian or whatever. So now he's not a religious man and he's joined the team, and his perception on translating the scrolls is rocking the boat, let's just say. And he kind of did it to himself, I won't lie, where he went on to a radio show, and this is not a pure quote, but he was basically talking to I think it was either the interviewer or one of his colleagues, where his colleague or whoever it was quite religious and talking about church. And Allegro said, well, after I've published this book about my findings, there won't be a church anymore, because of what he found in the scrolls and what he believed his research will show the world. So he rocked the boat and he got kicked off the team.
Mm.
and he was discredited. He lost all of his like prestigious, you know, credibility that he had built up. And it was kind of like a scandal from Hollywood that you've never seen before in a like research group, especially when it's like a group of people who are translating and researching such an important like piece of history. You would never expect the team, which is what they did, the rest of the team basically collaborated and wrote a letter, sent it to the Times, hating on Allegro. And that is not something that happens. It was like the first time really that that's ever happened with a research like scientific sort of group. Like I guess in Hollywood that's kind of normal, but not in this side of humanity.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, they like really put this guy down for, because they were scared. At this point, Allegro hadn't even posted any like books yet or anything. He's just said, oh, just wait, because what I'm about to share with you is crazy and it's going to disrupt religion as we know it. And that scared them enough to go out and publish a letter to the Times discrediting this man.
Wow.
That's how scared they were. So now there's a few sus activities going on, and I'm going to start with all this stuff, and then we're going to get into the links with psychedelics and early Christianity. We're going to get into that in a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But first, I feel like it's just some things from my book that I've been kind of collaborating. And first of all is these scrolls that were found, because again, there's like, I've discovered through more research that there's actually like hundreds of scrolls. There's not just 7, like I said before. There's 7 original ones that were like, I mean, they're not original, but they're the first ones that we found, if that makes sense. So they're original to our time in history, but they're not the original or anything. But ever since those ones were found, there's been hundreds more discovered.
Wow.
So some of these scrolls have revealed like connections between the Qumran community, so the original like area where the first scrolls was found, and that history, like that community of people have been there for like thousands of years. So these scrolls have linked the Qumran community with like communities that are quite far away, and the reason why it links these communities is because they share the same calendar. And this was quite uncomfortable for the leader of the international team at Rockefeller. His name is DeVox, or his last name is DeVox. And he was very uncomfortable like with a lot of the things getting out, obviously, because he's the one who like led his team to write this letter to the Times discrediting Allegro. Like, he's basically the whole reason why he's just a very religious, powerful, like a very religious man with a lot of power, and that usually is never a great thing. So yeah, he didn't really want that to get out, but there's just a lot of things that he's kind of either covered up, hasn't like allowed to be out in public. I'm pretty sure he's dead now, but I'm talking about when he was alive. Yeah, he's blocked things from coming out. He like really slowed down the process because they were discovering more and more, to them, disturbing facts, because it literally made them have to question their whole religion. So he didn't want to disrupt the Christianity, you know, and churches and stuff, like the whole belief of Christianity. So he was very careful, and he stopped a lot of things from coming out. And I believe that's also because he probably had connections to very high priests, like very high religious figures, not even priests, like I'm talking very major religious figures. I think he also had obviously connections to Rockefellers, because he's the head of the team that's working at Rockefeller Museum. So I doubt that he wouldn't. So he has a lot of connections, and he's making sure that they're happy. At least this is what I believe. He's making sure that they're happy, as well as his own beliefs are safe as well, because he doesn't want to believe something different. Anyway, so there's scrolls linking, you know, Qumran community with other communities that kind of go against the religious or like the mainstream story, that these were all like small little communities that didn't talk to each other. And another interesting fact was that there was a scroll, at least only one that I know of that's been talked about in the book, where it was bought by an American construction company who is affiliated with the American government as well as the CIA. So a lot of people are jumping in on this. Like, there was a CIA agent from the last video that I talked about. Although he didn't want to buy the scrolls, he was just involved, and he was sending pictures of the scrolls to his, I guess, to the CIA in America. And then all of a sudden the pictures like disappeared, and we don't know what's happened to them. And then now there's CIA, like a company who's affiliated with the government and the CIA, buying a scroll. So there was also another like $3,000 worth of cave for like artifacts and materials. So there's all these different caves. There's cave 1, cave 2, cave 3, cave 4. And so $3,000 worth of material from cave 4 was bought by the Vatican. So now the Vatican is buying stuff. And it's just kind of weird. I don't really know what to make of it. Because I can't imagine what they're doing with it. If, like, I don't know if they've bought the scrolls and then given them to research groups. Like, I don't know what's happened with them really, but it's just kind of like strange. It's a bit weird, but it's also not, because like what else would you expect? So yeah, very interesting. Another thing that is very important to note before we get into the whole link between psychedelics and Christianity is that there, at least at the time that this book was written, it's called The Dead Sea Scrolls Deception. So I haven't had a chance to research this myself if any more information has come out, like any more translations and information about the scrolls have been released by these researchers. But at the time of that book being published, only 25% of the scrolls had been like translated and released to the public that they've found. Only 25%. And this is like, I'm talking decades after they initially found the scrolls and had them in their midst and were able to research it. And we don't know why. I mean, I won't say why they haven't been published, because maybe they have now, but like decades, and it didn't need to take that long. This research group like came out into the public because the public was kind of getting a bit like, why are you taking so long to release these translations? And their excuses were like, oh, well, our team is like a bunch of teachers and they can only come over during the summer holidays. Like, I'm not even joking, this is their excuse. But the thing was, like, you can take photos and like look at the photos. Like, you don't need to be there. And like, there was other research groups with other scrolls that had like released their translations like nowhere near that long. And the team itself, so Devox, at least at the beginning, before he read all the scrolls and figured out what they were saying, he said that like they were only planning like 6 years and it would all be done. And then decades later, it's not done. So 25%, it's like nothing. There's still a lot out there, 75% to be discovered. And they've just like not done it, at least at that point. Again, I won't say that they still haven't, because I don't know, but yeah. Very, very interesting. So we don't know a lot of what they found, and I'm pretty sure this research group had, so they had a lot of the very important scrolls, and this was like probably one of the main teams of researchers. So it's a bit sus that they're the ones that haven't like published anything about it. So yeah, like published all of their scripts.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and like, I mean, people who know the team, who've looked into the team, like an Israeli professor, he claimed that this team of researchers was like a cabal, and like they would literally believe that they are the owners of these scrolls, this research team. They thought of themselves as the owners, and this shows because like when one of the members would retire or when they would die, they literally like put it in their will, or if they were retiring, they would like pass down the scrolls that they were researching down to whoever they chose, like a successor. And that's just not ordinary behavior. So that it's kind of a little bit culty, and just like it creates a monopoly of only Christian people or only religious people, only the people that they want to come and have a look at the scrolls and do their research when they pass it down, because they get to choose. They literally get to choose, and no one really argued against this, which is like kind of a bit strange at the same time, because it is, think about that happening today. Like, there's a group of scientists and researchers looking into something, and they choose who gets to go next. Like, whoever is researching, say, a pot or looking into a pot, they get to pass down that pot to whoever they want. Like, that's just not normal, regular procedure.
Yeah, it suggests ownership and control, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And it's just like really odd. I don't know. So with all that said, let's get into the psychedelics. Now, I'm just going to state right now before we begin that I have yet to this all comes from a book by John M Allegro, the only non religious person that was on the team and then got kicked off because he was rocking the boat too much. He actually wrote a ton of books about his research, and a few of them were actually about how he believed that psychedelics link between like early Christianity, and that everything we believe about religion now is based upon that and has just been morphed and changed and manipulated. And I just want to say I haven't read his book. I'm getting secondhand accounts here because I'm already reading one book, and I'm just taking it one book at a time.
Mm.
But yeah, I'm getting this off of Joe Rogan because I watched a bit of his podcast where he talked about it. And he was talking about it with another man who seemed very informed on John Allegro's book and work. And everything that I listened to them say, if it ever correlated with the research that I'd already done, like if it ever overlapped, it overlapped correctly. So I'm saying this with like maybe not 100% fact, but like chances are it's fact. I just can't say for sure. So let's get into it. So according to the Joe Rogan podcast, in John M Allegro's book, he claimed that he found a link between the words on the scrolls, so the scrolls writing, and ancient Sumerian language. Is that how you say it? Sumerian? I think that's right.
Spell it.
Semurian. Sumerian. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, they're connected linguistically. I can't
Linguistically.
Yeah, thank you. I can't speak. So, and like this is quite an interesting thing because even though John M. Allegro, like I personally trust him, like I just automatically trust him, which is maybe not the best way to go about it. But because he had been studying etymology so long and because he was kicked off and like the team was so scared of what he was going to say, I trust his word.
Mm.
But he's like literally done so much work into like the correlations of specific words between the scrolls and ancient Sumerian language. So very interesting. And like one of these links is actually between the word Jesus, and he says that the word Jesus came from an ancient Sumerian word that means, and now this is going to be very out there, so just prepare yourselves. That means a mushroom covered in God's semen.
Oh.
Now, where this kind of comes into play is think about an ancient Sumerian or just an ancient person that has no recollection, like no idea of technology or anything about science. So they're living life in the forest, and then it rains. They're religious as well. They believe in a higher power, and it rains. And then all of a sudden, like literally overnight or on the same day, mushrooms appear. So John M. Allegro claims that this comes from like the rain being God's semen and then it coming down and the mushrooms coming out, and the mushrooms are Jesus, like God's children, sort of like God's child or son. So very interesting. And that's kind of a good segue into psychedelics and mushrooms. So I don't really know where to start with this, but before I do, I think I should ask you if you have any questions, Mum.
No, it's good so far. It's been a journey, that's for sure.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
well,
but I'm interested in what you're saying about the mushrooms now.
Yeah, okay. So if anyone has any questions, pop them in the comments and I will try and answer them if I can. So yes, mushrooms. I'm just trying to read my notes and see. Okay, yes. So Allegro claimed that the sacred mushroom of Christianity, or ancient Christianity is probably a better word, was the Amanita muscaria. Now that mushroom is the classic, I like to call fairy mushroom, the red and the white polka dots. Like it's the most probably famous looking mushroom. Mm-hmm. And I actually didn't know that it was a psychedelic. I just thought it was poisonous and it would kill you if you ate it, which it is poisonous, but I didn't realize it was also psychedelic. So that's what he says. And he actually brought up a ton of connections between this mushroom and like modern day Christmas.
Yeah, right.
There, I'm going to get into it. This is so exciting to me because like I'm so into the connections between like almost like etymology but with life, not with words, and like where, you know, the symbolism sort of. So the Amanita muscaria mushroom has connections to Santa Claus and Christmas. I mean, think of the colors. Think of red and white, and that's this mushroom, red and white. And it grows under pine trees as well. I mean, not just under pine trees, but it's a very common place for it to grow. And there's also, you know, like flying reindeer. Where the hell did that come from? It kind of seems to me like they took the mushrooms back then and like they were tripping and flying reindeer. Like that, it's just kind of odd that it's flying reindeer. Why flying reindeer? Also, caribou, a kind of reindeer, are known to love this kind of mushroom.
Yeah, right.
They love it. And there is like accounts of people who have taken the mushroom like as psychedelics, gone out to pee, and then a caribou smells it and charges at them and like knocks them out of the way to drink their pee because like the psychedelic carries through to the pee. And like back in ancient times when people would take this mushroom as psychedelics, the shaman would actually would actually eat the mushroom and then urinate, and then all the people would drink the urine to like go into a trip, which is really gross, but interesting fact.
Inspiration, that is.
Yeah, that's commitment to the spirit realm. So yeah, and there's also kind of like an interesting. This is a bit of a stretch, but just like I just thought I'd add it in there. Like thinking about toys and like opening a present and you having a colorful toy, and it would kind of be the same back then, like a very colorful mushroom, and they would dry it and then give it as a present, and then they would open it and it would be like a really bright like toy, sort of, not a toy but like a bright present. I thought that was kind of a bit of a stretch, but it also, the reason why I even am saying it is because of another connection that I'm about to tell you. So it kind of links with the present idea. So shamanic Siberian rituals involving this Amanita muscaria mushroom, they were outlawed. I don't know when, but they were outlawed at some point, probably a long time ago, because that's just, unfortunately, rituals and shamanic things like that get outlawed pretty quickly once invaders come. So they were outlawed, and people would, Siberians would climb through chimneys to deliver the mushrooms to people. So they would have like hidden practices. So that kind of coincides with the presents, because like some person would climb down the chimney to deliver the presents, and the present would be a bright, colorful mushroom. And then now it's Santa Claus climbs down your chimney and delivers bright, colorful presents, like in toys. Yeah. So I thought adding those two together, it does kind of make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So another big thing is, it's not the thumbnail of this video as I'm posting this. So if you're tuning in now, don't look, but I will be changing the thumbnail, showing some ancient artwork. And if you're watching this later on, you can have a look. And if you're watching this now, you can literally go and Google like ancient religious paintings or religious paintings with mushrooms. And there are so many. There's even one with these, I think it's Adam and Eve, with like this big red circle with like little white dots. So it's like a mushroom, an Amanita muscaria mushroom behind them in this painting. And then there's all these paintings with Jesus and his disciples, and there's all these mushrooms down the bottom. It's like, you can literally just Google ancient, religious paintings, ancient religious paintings, And I'm sure you could find at least one with a mushroom. Like there's all these paintings with mushrooms. Why are all these religious paintings like with mushrooms? I just don't understand it.
Because of the Dead Sea Scrolls, possibly.
Maybe. But some of them I think are before this. No, some of them are before the discovery of them.
Right.
Like way before. Like
Right.
centuries before.
That's interesting.
Yes. And, you know, when you look into the cabal, I keep saying cabal and how they work, it's all in symbolism, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And back then, paintings were their symbolism. And all these religious paintings have mushrooms in it. It's just crazy. And another thing, in the 1940s and 50s, you can Google it, 1940s or 50s Christmas cards. They all have this mushroom on it, this like Amanita muscaria mushroom, the fairy mushroom, I like to call it. So why are all these Christmas cards got this one mushroom on it? Because, like, to me, beyond the colors, without any knowledge of the Dead Sea Scrolls, like, I would have no like sort of inkling of how they would connect. I mean, I'm sure, did these mushrooms even bloom or come out during winter? I assume not, because it's snowing. Like, I would think it would be spring or something. So, like, the fact that they've got all these Christmas cards with this mushroom on it, I have just no idea why. And it's kind of funny to me when you think about it that these cards stopped in the 50s with all these mushrooms, and in the 50s, so the late 40s was when the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, but it wasn't until the 50s where it was like being researched. So it's kind of funny that that mushroom was taken out of the Christmas cards when the scrolls were being researched. Very interesting. Another thing. Oh, yes. Allegro's book was taken out, like was bought out by the Christian church. And so it couldn't be like put on in stores or anything. It couldn't be like shared out to the public. It was taken down. You can buy it now, but at the time you couldn't. You only could get it from someone who had already bought it. The Christian church bought his book out. So they're obviously
people couldn't read it.
Yeah, so people couldn't read it. So weird. So like that's something that you just can't ignore. They're obviously wanting this not to go out. I mean, it's kind of late at this point because it's already out, but they're doing their best still. Like the fact that humans don't really know about this very much, and you have to go read a whole ass book about it, or like watch videos of Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not exactly common knowledge. I would feel like it's so life-changing that if there was no manipulation around hiding it, it would be something that we would be talking about or like written in the history books. Like these scrolls have changed our belief of religion. And another thing before we finish off, because it's been 30 minutes, is about how another sort of link between psychedelics is the burning bush and Moses, because these people were looking into it, and I think it was these two brothers. I don't know their names or their backgrounds or anything, but I know that they're at least they know about whatever, like maybe they're biblical researchers or something, I'm not quite sure, but they were looking into this story from the Bible of the burning bush, and they believe that the burning bush was actually acacia, which was very common at the time. And the story was all about how sorry, I've been talking for 30 minutes straight. My voice is getting lost. And they were talking about how Moses was just smoking a joint, basically of acacia bush, and he had this vision of God and the flood and like this psychedelic experience because acacia releases DMT and stuff. So I think that's very possible. Like, if we put ourselves in the mindset of these people who are smoking psychedelics and stuff, they're not thinking, oh, this is psychedelics, this releases DMT, which then like brings upon all these visions and stuff. I honestly don't even think people who today smoke psychedelics believe that, because then they go into the actual experience and it's not like that at all. But to not have any context about the scientific stuff behind it, they're thinking these plants are God. They're thinking they're smoking these things or taking these mushrooms, and they're going to other worlds. Like, imagine what it would be like then. Imagine, like, I know that I heard that there was this man who went on a live stream and took some psychedelic, and he came back on the live stream and he was like in tears, like in the weirdest state, and he claimed that he had just lived 3 months in another life and then came back. So, like, imagine what these people were experiencing. They're thinking, I'm talking to God, and they probably are talking to God, to be honest.
Yeah, people today still think that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what
So,
they're doing.
like, they're not, their experiences when they write them down is probably going to be, I mean, the way that they talk about it, the way that they believe what they experienced, it is going to sound crazy, especially now, because it was crazy. Like, they literally are experiencing something that can't be written in words, for one. And when it is written in words, it is a story like that. It is a story like the flood and going on a boat and like every animal, it's just, I think that's why so much of it can be discredited, is because it's like, well, that's impossible though. Like, you can't do that. But it's like, no, these people did do that in some aspect.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the video for today.
Awesome, Juliet. Thank you.
Oh gosh, I'm glad I wrote it all down. Today, the past 2 days, I've been like reading this book, and I'm like, I hope I get enough information, but I have, so I'm happy about that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
We're back on Friday.
Yes. Oh, let's see how that goes. I'll be in Byron.
Yeah.
All
It'll
right.
work out.
Yeah. Sending
All right.
love.
Thank you, Juliet.
Thank you, Mum, for listening. Mwah, to everyone. Big hugs.